Everyone, I'm Bentley Little from Chattanooga State Media Club. We're here at the Chattanooga Film Festival 2016 with Zoe Bell. Zoe, thank you very much for being here today.
Your pleasure. I'm welcome.
Both.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure, I think is what I was trying to say.
Absolutely. Now, you were here supporting a movie called Camino. Can you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, Camino is the story of a photojournalist who's by the name of Avery. She is on assignment in Colombia, sort of tracking this bunch of freedom fighters who all, the guise is that they're there to help people and distribute medication and all that kind of good Samaritan type carry on. And then one night she can't sleep and she's out taking photos and captures their leader, Guillermo, played by Nacho Vigalondo, who is just legendary in so many ways. I could talk about it for hours, but I shan't. She captures a photo of him, I don't want to give it away, but doing something that's pretty heartbreaking, and is then on the run because he's trying to get her back so he can squash the photo before it gets released. So it's basically a chase through the jungle, which it's a chase through the jungle film, which I think is just, I could have just said that.
Now, and you were also a producer of this movie, is that right?
Yeah, I wasn't as involved from the ground up as I was on Ray's. So Josh Waller's directing this one, who also directed Ray's, that I was also the lead on, and we produced that together. There was a couple other producers, but he and I produced it together. This one was a little bit more like they contacted me and we're doing this film. There's a war photographer. His name is Avery. Blah blah blah. And I was like, well, what if he was a she? And they were like, well, that's why we're calling you, because Josh apparently said, what if he was a she? And Dan said, and what if she was Zoe? And then they rang me and I was like, yeah, she's Zoe. So that's how that came about.
So you've had a very interesting career trajectory. You went from a Kiwi stunt woman to now a American actress and producer. How did that all
Sounds
come about?
so good when you say it like that.
Like how does it? How
Why
do
don't
you
you just remove all the other bits of life in between and just go, this is what happened? Sorry, what was the question?
How do you go from being, Kiwi stunt woman to now producing and starring in American films?
I'm not really sure how to answer that question. It's sort of it certainly, like I sort of implied just then, it doesn't feel like it happened easily. That's to say it required hard work. And it also required a lot of sort of shifting of mindsets along the way, and me trying to shift other people's mindsets too, which I found fundamentally is the only way to do that is to shift your own. If I'm uncertain of my qualifications as an actor, there's no convincing you that I'm qualified, no matter how hard you try, and I did for a long time. That I think it's also that thing that kind of has been most of my life has been when opportunities pop up, saying yes to them and working really hard to have earned that opportunity. Because seldom do I feel like I've earned the opportunity when it first pops up, but if the decision is I'm going to take it and then work to have earned it, then there's then you end up looking back and being like, oh yeah, okay, cool. In hindsight, I earned that, I never expected, I didn't even understand that I was going to be a stunt person. I was a gymnast and a martial artist, so it's all been, I remember saying when I was quite young, thinking I was so clever, and then for many years I was like, you're just full of bad word that starts with S, was that like, if you do what you're really passionate about, then at the end of the day, you're only qualified to do things within that sphere, and I did martial arts and I did gymnastics and I did photography and English. Those were the things that I sort of sunk my attention into, and all of those things combined sort of become physical storytelling, There were many years in between where I was like, God, I was young and stupid. I didn't know what I was talking about because that's just not the case, and this is really hard, and I still get moments like that. But I think at the end of the day, whatever you work really hard at, if you work really hard at what you're passionate at, then you're creating a groove in life that sort of funnels you into more of the same stuff, I guess it goes for the same thing. If you work really hard at stuff you're really not enjoying, you'll probably just end up doing more of that stuff,
Right.
Who knows?
Now, if I'm not mistaken, one of your first stunt roles was on a New Zealand soap opera, right? And you had to throw yourself out of a car?
Yeah.
How did that conversation take place?
Well, there's two stories kind of clashing there. One was the New Zealand soap opera is called Short on the Street. And on that one, that was like my third job, I think.
Okay.
My third day on set. And I had to get hit by a car.
Oh, hit by a car.
Yeah. Yeah, and that conversation literally went something like, what? And I can remember standing, you know, we did a couple of rehearsals, but even before the first rehearsal, I remember standing in the street, knowing that I was about to get hit by a car and thinking, this is why humans have instincts. Because my instinct is to just am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Absolutely.
Get the fuck out of the way of this moving vehicle right now, but my job requires me to not, and it was the first time it wasn't just me taking a risk, it was me literally fighting my body's instinct to save itself. And you know, you take precautions, and we did start off slow and we worked up into it, and then the rest of my career has just been facing similar challenges time after time. Now it's more like my emotional safety instinct is like, don't cry in front of these people, but my job literally says she cries in front of, you know, I'm like, damn it.
Now, you made I think, you know, you were in the documentary Double Dare, which I think brought attention to you for a lot of people. But then I think you really got notoriety here from Death Proof with Tarantino. You've been a stunt woman for him a couple of times. How were you able to foster that relationship with Tarantino, where you went from Uma Thurman's stunt
Bought him
double?
heaps of really expensive stuff. Straight out of the gate, just got him drunk all the time. I think those kinds of friendships foster themselves in some way, where I was straight out of New Zealand. It was my first ever feature film. It was my first time working on location outside of New Zealand. It was my first time working on anything with that kind of budget. It was my first time working with, like Lucy's famous, Lucy Lawless is famous, but that didn't occur to me, you know, because it was just sort of my normal day-to-day. I remember walking at the audition for Kill Bill, and there was Splash and Reality Bites on Exocycles as I walked in. I was just like, there's Daryl Hannah and Ethan Hawke, and I was like, where am I right now? How is this happening? Am I still drunk? What's going on? But so there was a lot of that sort of stuff going on. But I think I also came in as sort of like, I was just that little Kiwi tomboy stunt girl, and Quentin was like, yes, that energy works for me. And so, we drank a lot of beer together. I mean, we all did. And we worked really hard together, and there's just a bonding that happens when you find two sort of, if you're kind of bound to be slightly kindred anyway. Right. When you work really hard and you party really hard and you're under, you know, we were in China for the first 3 months of knowing him, was in China. And it's an intense, so there were a lot of very fast, very long-lasting relationships that were caused then. And I don't know, once you get in his loyalty books, you kind of...
Right. And I mean, you've been in pretty much all of his movies since then.
Every single one, yeah. In some capacity.
Are you kind of his muse now? I mean...
People like to bandy that word around, and I love it when they do. But I mean, I think the beauty of Quentin is he has multiple muses in every different facet. And I mean, from cars to movies to women to male actors to directors to musicians to like, he's just a sort of, he's a fan guy of stuff. Like, and before fan was like, before you could say I'm fanning out on someone, he was a fan. He's just a fan of things and stuff and people, and he's just passionate about it. So I think it's he has many muses, and I'm happy. I would happily be one of them.
Right. Now, Death Proof is pretty much a movie built around Zoe Bell is an awesome badass. Watch her be a badass for 2 hours. Yeah. Was that your idea?
Great idea.
His?
No, it was totally his idea. When he first told me about Death Proof, I feel like this is being really loud and annoying for you guys. I'm going to switch rests. When he first told me about Death Proof, Monica Staggs, who was Daryl Hannah's stunt double in Kill Bill, and I were over there. We were being nominated for an MTV award for one of the fights in Kill Bill. And so we were over there all getting dressed up. I thought I was getting dressed up. In hindsight, I literally looked like a farmer's daughter. I was like, oh, wow, Zoe, did you spend $20 on that dress? And I was so proud of myself. But we were sitting around and he was telling me about Death Proof. And he said, my next movie it's about this stunt guy who who kills women with his car, basically. And the car is Death Proof, so he never dies. And I was like, first of all, you're a twisted bastard and I love it. Second of all, one of your leads better look like me. Literally what I said to him, because I want to work on this show. Right. And he was, you know, I'm sure at the time, all I heard him say was like, yeah, whatever. He was probably like, little does she know, you know. And I honestly had no idea. He did say, I want you guys to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, whether he'd said it like that or it was just an assumption, my assumption was, you know, one of the shots was you'd see a bunch of the lead girls sitting around a table, and then in the background at the bar would be Monica Staggs and I drinking beers, and we'd get in a fight in the background. That's literally what I thought he meant. And he'd be able to be like, yep, Tarantino, throwback to Kill Bill, done, check, you know. So when he turned up at my house, literally turned up at my house with the script, I was already a bit like, you coming to my house? What's going on? And then he showed me the script. That was the first I knew of the fact that he was under the impression that I was going to be an actor in this movie. Right. And then I very quickly became under the impression that I was too. But it was literally, when he first started showing me these pages of dialogue, I was like, I am terrified. I don't know, like, what if I'm the girl who screws up a Tarantino movie? I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person who makes Tarantino movie better and cooler and awesomer. I don't know if I can act, you know? Right. And he said, well, let's go have beers. There's a common thread running here.
Yeah, I see this. This is going on.
And he took me out for beers, and he was like, let me tell you about the chase sequence. And he told me about the chase sequence, and by the end of like beer 2 and the chase sequence description, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm in. I'm definitely in. And he basically said, look, he basically said, I'm not quoting him, but he basically said, I'm Tarantino, I don't make wrong casting decisions. Right. And again, that's an irrefutable argument, so I was like, that's a good point. And he was like, plus I know what I want from you, and I know how to get it. Right. And I was like, again, you just can't argue with the man, you know?
I mean, that shows a huge amount of faith in you. Where you hadn't
hence
acted,
me being terrified.
Right, yeah. I mean, you hadn't acted before, right? You'd just been a stunt woman. Yeah. And this is the first time, and not only is this your first time acting, but you were given the lead role in a Tarantino movie.
And I tell you what, he never told me that I was the lead, and I never recognized it until the movie had come out. And I mean, I still don't feel like I'm the lead. It's definitely an ensemble, but it is, you know, a pretty pivotal character that I think he was wise to not let me know just how much was resting on me. Yeah.
And so now, what is scarier for you? You know, since you've now been acting in a number of movies, you've been in Oblivion, you've been on CSI, you've been all over the place. Is doing the stunt work?
Love it when someone just truncates it like that. I'm like, yeah, man, I've been all over the show. This is amazing.
I mean, is it scarier doing the stunt work, the acting, or the production work? I mean, you've worn many hats now, so which one is the scariest?
I mean, they all come with their own set of scary, you know. Yeah. I think with stunt work, I'd got to the point where I'd sort of figured out a way to cope or channel or utilize or mask that fear in a way that I wasn't afraid of being afraid anymore. With acting, I'm just getting there now, where it's like I'm still nervous before walking into auditions. I'm still nervous on my first day. I'm still like the days before, if I've got a big scene, I'm still like, what if I can't find it? What if I can't do it? You know, I still go through all of that, but I'm a little bit more comfortable with that fear now. And the producing is similar. You know, it's the same thing. The thing with the producer thing is, what if I can't pull it off? I don't have any problem with the being on set as a producer. That comes very, very naturally and comfortably, and I actually like being a part of as a creative producer. I love the being on set. I like working between the crews and the cast, and I don't know. I feel very at home in that space. It makes sense. I've grown up on a set since I was 17. You know? But like I've got a couple of projects that are in early development now, and they're like my babies, and it's equal parts reassuring and relieving because I know I can make something happen. It's on me. I'm not waiting for someone to deem me worthy, you know, like, oh, well, he's going to cast a 50-year-old, so you'll do. I'm like, what? That means that 23-year-olds are taking my roles. But it's a little bit more like I'm in control. Right. The scary part of that is, you know, if it fails or if it doesn't go, it's all on me. Right. So that's, I haven't been doing that but as long, so I'm just plain scared of that. But I don't know, there's like they all come with their own challenges, and I don't think any are less, because they're all still a little bit scary, they're all still really satisfying and gratifying when you do come out the other end, hopefully unscathed, relatively unscathed.
Speaking of being unscathed, I had heard a story about you injuring your back but not knowing for a couple of months. What's the story with that?
The story with that is, in fact, I hurt my back on Xena, and I definitely knew about it. It was one of my first ever injuries. Monica Staggs, who was doubling Daryl on Kill Bill, hurt her back. I'll rephrase. I broke Monica's back. So somewhere along the line, the stories got crossed in that it was me that did it. There's the shot where the bride comes flying in through the trailer door with 2 feet. So Monica's doubling Daryl and I'm doubling the bride. And they have me do it for real. So so I'm running and I'm literally doing a double side kick to her chest. She's got a plate on. And Quentin's like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not, because I'm being careful, you know. I'm like, that's all boobs and ribs and breakable stuff, and you know. And at one point, it's just not selling the way it wants to. So I went up to Monica and I said, I'm going to have to really kick you. And she was like, yeah, totally. And I was like, no, I mean, like, I'm gonna kick you. Like, you'll probably travel. And she was like, yeah. And she'd asked for, I can't remember, she'd asked for some padded furniture and we didn't have it or whatever. Anyway, I did the flying sidekick and it was a little bit more effective than I think we were sort of expecting. And she flew back and hit herself against the, I think it was a record player or bookshelf or something. And I just remember saying cut, and those weird noises that come out of someone when it's not good. You know, there's the difference between ow and you know, that sound makes me sick every time I hear it. And it was that kind of sound. And at first, I don't know if I should say that. She was like, I think I popped a boob. I was like, oh my God, what is that? I don't even know what that means. Are you gonna die from that? What happens here? But anyway, so then we figured maybe it was a broken rib, and she went on and on and on. It wasn't until about a year later she went to a doctor complaining about back pain due to something else, and they did x-rays, and they were like, oh, it looks like you broke your back like a year and a half ago. And she rang me up and she was like, yeah, it wasn't a popped boob, you broke my back. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to break your back. But so those two stories somewhere have got crossed. Okay. Where it's me that broke my back, whereas it's just me that broke her back.
That seems like much more exciting then. So because you're not the one getting hurt.
More exciting. I don't know. It makes me feel worse. I hate the thought of having hurt somebody. But
now, you did stunt work for the movie Catwoman. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And you did a 200-foot drop.
Yeah, I was on a wire, 200 and something. It was like 22 stories.
Is that the biggest stunt that you've done like that? I mean,
yeah,
I know
that was definitely for me at the time, and actually even still now, I would say in terms of scope, it was definitely, one of those like, okay, coping with fear, engage coping mechanism, you know. And the stunt coordinator basically took me up there and sat me at the end of the platform that I was going to be dropping off, and just sort of I was like, can I have some time up here? He was like, yep, take some, and I literally sat up there for about half an hour just trying to get to the place where that felt comfortable. Because if I didn't know I was falling off it, I love being up high. I have like that shit makes me tingle in a good way. But it was that kind of like forming a relationship with that height was my airbag. When I would sit with my feet dangling over the edge, the airbag was so small it would disappear under my feet. Like I was like, oh, I don't see that saving me if it all goes wrong. And more importantly than the height was I had the wire wrapped around my body twice. Yeah. And I had to fall and then pull a quick release and then unravel. Right. Which the only thing about that is it's technically more prone to fuck ups, you know, because I have these things called appendages that, you know, if a wire wraps around one and you're going at speed dropping down, there's no. Yeah. So that was to me, and on another level, having to be technically aware kind of removed the fear too, which is always one of those things. It's like if I'm thinking about getting this right and doing that, I was meant to count to 3 and then pull the ripcord so that I, you know, had traveled a certain amount. And he said, just count to 4 Mississippi. And I was like, okay, on the first take, it felt slow to me, but I must have been like, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi. Because I didn't reach where I was meant to reach. I was like, well, it was moving slow to me, you guys. I don't know what's going on with you. But there was one moment when the wire caught on, because of course I'm a woman in film, so I was wearing high heels whilst I was jumping off a 22-story building, that the wire got caught in my heel. And I don't know, it's one of those weird, like, thank God I have instincts moments where you watch the footage back and you see it as I'm coming around this way, so it's hard to explain, but I'm rolling this way and the wire's coming to unravel, and it catches on my heel and you see my leg just go, whoa. And at some point, my body knew it was happening and kind of just flicks it open, and I just keep going. But I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, my leg would have just been like, you know. So, I don't know.
So, I mean, how do you get yourself in the mindset to, prepare for a 200-foot drop?
This microphone's trying to undress me right now.
For a 200-foot drop, strapping yourself to the hood of cars, getting hit by a car at 17. I mean, you talked about, pressing down that fear. I mean, as you said, you're denying, human instinct at this point.
I think there gets to a point where your instincts shift a little bit, and a huge part of it is, like, just when you said strapping yourself to a car, I think you hit something for me that is, I'm not throwing myself off a building. I'm not strapping myself to a car. I'm not driving the car that's hitting me. I have a team of people around me that are qualified individuals that you learn to trust, and so there comes a point where if I don't feel safe doing something, if I don't trust the rig or the rigger or the gag or the situation, the materials or the explosion it becomes my job to say something. And so you learn very quickly that unless you don't trust it, you have to, your two options are to not trust it or trust it. Right. If you don't trust it, why? And if you've got a reason why, then fix it. And if you don't have any reason why, then you're either in the wrong job or you should just do it. So it's that kind of, the learned trust is something that I take with me on every job. And once but I'm still, things go wrong. So you want to double check all the time. But seldom are you ever doing a gag all on your own. I don't, even a high fall, if it's just you and there's no wires, there's someone who's placed the bag, there's someone who's blowing the window, there's someone who's catching you down the bottom, there's someone who's there to put you out if you're on fire, there's a team of people that go into all of this. It's like you're just the lead singer of the band at this point, And at some point you'll be the bassist because that's how it happens in the stunt community. So I think a huge part of that has to do with it's the difference between which I also love, but like roller coasters. Right. I guess even that, you've got to trust the roller coaster. Otherwise, there's a difference between, oh, I'm so scared, and oh my God, I actually think I'm going to die. Like, that's not a pleasurable experience,
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, there's definitely something in the trusting myself and trusting the equipment and the team. Remove the rational fear. I can irrationalize it, if you know what I mean.
Right. Now, for a number of years, stunt work was kind of the unsung hero of film for most of it. And then we started getting people like Jackie Chan and whatnot who started getting famous for it. I think you're pretty much the only female stunt woman who...
female stunt man? Wait, woman?
You're probably the only stunt woman who's made the transition from stunt work to acting in the scale that you have. And nowadays we have a lot more of an emphasis on stunts. We have the guys who directed John Wick. They were stunt folks. We have movies like Mad Max, which were beautiful stunt showpieces. And it seems like stunt people are getting a lot more credit. Gina Carrero from UFC, she is getting recognized as well.
Carrano, yep.
Is it really coming around now where people are starting to see the hard work and dedication the stunt people are doing, and it's being more respected now?
I don't think it's a matter of being more respected. I think it's just a matter of being more exposed. And I think it's true for all of movie making. I think with the internet and the birth of reality TV, and that there's sort of there isn't the magic, there isn't the hidden magic so much anymore. It's kind of people want to know the behind the scenes. People are fascinated by outtakes and behind the scenes stuff, and that's and I get it. I'm fascinated by that stuff. I love watching special features. That's movie crack. So I think it's just that more people are now in a position to be able to appreciate something that. And there was a while where I was like, I found it quite disappointing. I loved the fact that we were sort of the action behind the face, and people be like, does it ever piss you off that Uma gets all the credit? I'm like, no, that's exactly the point. Right. That is so the point. As long as my peers and maybe a couple of friends and family that think I'm cool know that I'm doing it, then that's the whole point. But then the argument comes up of Oscars and academies for the stunt departments, and it's a complicated situation. It's hard to do. I mean, do you give it to the performer, or do you give it to the stunt coordinator, or so there's a whole argument about it being complicated, which I get. But at the same time, if there's awards for sound, especially on a movie like Mad Max, for example, like what would Mad Max be without the action?
Right.
You know, and again, it's a team thing. Like that action is partly amazing because of the lighting and the coloring and the sound and the cinematography and the special effects, and it's all unison. But you know, there's a lot of movies where without the action, well, you're no longer an action movie.
Right. And plus, I mean, they have the real people doing it. I mean, there's been such an over-reliance on CGI characters doing a lot of stunt work, especially like in superhero movies, that for movies like Mad Max and for the stuff that you do, it's such a breath of fresh air. I mean, it feels like it should be recognized in some way.
Well, and you'd be I guess it's surprising to people, but even when, you know, you have a CGI superhero, a lot of that stuff is still a stuntman in a studio somewhere with a whole bunch of ping pong balls on him bouncing around in a leotard, because that's how they get the motion capture, you know. So it's clearly it's no longer a leotard with ping pong balls, but that was back in the days of Xena we did that. But you know, so there's still a lot of that stuff. But I know what you mean. I still, my favorite thing is when live action and CGI, if you're going to use CGI, when the two of them are merged, like you only give the CGI credit when it needs to be used, and you only use humans when they need to be used, and it becomes sort of seamless, like that opening sequence of Revenant. Have you seen it? Yeah. Like that, I was just like, it kind of pulled me out of the movie because I was so technically aware of how phenomenally some dude in the far corner's leg is snapping and bleeding because he's just been hit by an arrow, even though we're not, and then he's in it for a split second. And I was just like, oh my God, can you just rewind that and start again, please? I need to watch this and take note.
Right.
So that when it combines like that, it's brilliant for me.
Right.
Because I would rather watch live action because I'm just an emotional, I'm an emotion whore. Like I like to watch characters and relationships and emotions, and so when that's what's relevant and what's tangible in action, that's my favorite.
Absolutely. Well, Zoe, thank you so much for coming by today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure is all mine.
Everyone, that was Zoe Bell here at the Chattanooga Film Festival 2016. Stay tuned. We have more exciting interviews and updates as we go along. Have a good day.